There is a city of 500,000 people in the middle of the Amazon rainforest. No road connects it to the outside world. The only way in or out is by boat or by plane. It has been this way for over a century. In another place, an entire village falls asleep without warning. Men, women, and children collapse mid-sentence, mid-step, mid-meal, and do not wake up for days, sometimes weeks. Scientists have studied it for over a decade. No one has a definitive answer. One settlement in the Canadian Arctic endures 4 months of complete darkness every winter. Not short days, no sun at all. The people who lived there were not given a choice. They were moved there by their own government and abandoned. And in one city, 300,000 people have built their lives on frozen ground that is now melting beneath their feet. Buildings are cracking. Roads are sinking. The permafrost that holds everything together is disappearing, and there is no way to stop it. These are not places humans were designed to inhabit. The heat, the cold, the isolation, the rain, the poison in the air and the ground. Every single one of these environments has found its own way to tell humans they are not welcome. And in every single case, humans have refused to listen. This is our countdown of the 10 most extreme places on Earth too harsh for human life. Before we start, drop a comment telling us where you are watching from and what time it is right now. We want to see how many countries this video reaches. Number 10. Motuo County, Tibet Autonomous Region, China. In the far southeastern corner of Tibet, pressed against the border with India, there is a county that until 2013 had no road connecting it to the rest of China. Not a bad road, not an unpaved road, no road at all. Motuo County sits inside the Yarlung Sangpo Grand Canyon, the deepest canyon on Earth, deeper than the Grand Canyon by over 1,500 meters, roughly 5,000 feet. The terrain is so extreme that every attempt to build a road into the county failed for decades. Landslides buried construction crews. Avalanches wiped out months of progress overnight. The mountains surrounding the valley rise above 7,000 meters, roughly 23,000 feet, creating a natural fortress of rock, ice, and jungle that resisted every engineering effort China could throw at it. Before the road was completed in 2013, reaching Motuo required a multi-day trek through dense subtropical forest, across rivers with no bridges, over mountain passes above 4,000 meters, 13,000 feet, where altitude sickness was a constant threat. The trails were infested with venomous snakes, clouds of leeches that attached to any exposed skin, and ticks carrying diseases that had no nearby hospital to treat. According to records from the Chinese Ministry of Transport, 5 previous attempts to build a road into Motuo failed between 1965 and 2009. Bridges were swept away by floods, tunnels collapsed, entire road sections slid off mountainsides during monsoon season. The 2013 road that finally connected the county required a tunnel through a mountain and cost over 1 billion yuan. And even today, the road is frequently closed by landslides and avalanches, sometimes for weeks at a time. Roughly 12,000 people live in Motuo. The Mompa and Loba ethnic groups have inhabited this valley for centuries, long before anyone tried to build a road. They survived by farming rice, corn, and bananas in the subtropical climate of the canyon floor, a microclimate so different from the frozen Tibetan plateau above that it feels like a different planet. For most of recorded history, these 12,000 people lived in one of the most biodiverse and beautiful places on Earth, completely cut off from modern civilization, surrounded by mountains that even the world's second-largest economy could not conquer for 50 years. They did not need the road. The road needed them, because the government could not accept that an entire county existed beyond its reach. Number 9. Sabah, Caribbean, Netherlands. In the northeastern Caribbean, roughly 50 kilometers, about 31 miles, south of Sint Maarten, there is an island so small and so steep that it has no beach. Not a small beach, no beach at all. The entire island is essentially the top of a volcano rising straight out of the ocean, with cliffs dropping into the sea on every side. Sabah measures just 13 square kilometers, 5 square miles. Its population is roughly 2,000. And it is home to the Wancho E. Yarauskin Airport, which holds the record for the shortest commercial runway in the world at just 400 meters, roughly 1,300 feet. The runway ends at cliffs on both sides. There is no room for error. Pilots who land here require special certification, and only small propeller aircraft are allowed. But the runway is not the most extreme thing about this island. Sabah sits directly in the Caribbean hurricane corridor. The island has been struck by major hurricanes repeatedly throughout its history. Hurricane Irma in 2017, a Category 5 storm with winds exceeding 295 kilometers per hour, 183 miles per hour, caused severe damage to the island's infrastructure. Buildings were destroyed, the harbor was wrecked. Power and water systems were knocked out for weeks. According to the Royal Netherlands Meteorological Institute, Saba's position and elevation make it statistically one of the most hurricane-exposed inhabited islands in the Caribbean. The island has no natural harbor large enough to shelter boats during storms. When a hurricane approaches, there is nowhere to go. The airport closes. The sea becomes impassable. 2,000 people on a rock in the ocean, waiting. The island's only road, called simply the road, was considered impossible to build. Dutch engineers in the 1930s declared that a road could not be constructed on terrain this steep. A local resident named Josephus Lambert Hassel studied road engineering by correspondence course, designed the road himself, and built it with local labor. It took 20 years. The road climbs from sea level to the island's peak through hairpin turns carved into volcanic rock. There are no traffic lights on Saba, no fast food restaurants, no chain hotels. The island has one gas station, one medical center, and one high school. People stay because the isolation that makes life difficult is also what makes the island theirs. 2,000 people on 5 square miles of vertical volcanic rock, battered by hurricanes, served by the shortest runway on Earth, connected to the world by a road that engineers said could not exist. Number 8. Iquitos, Loreto region, Peru. Deep in the Peruvian Amazon, roughly 100 kilometers, 62 miles, from the point where 3 rivers merge to form the Amazon itself, there is a city of nearly 500,000 people. It has hospitals, universities, shopping centers, and a cathedral built with iron structures designed by Gustav Eiffel's workshop. And there is no road leading to it. None. Not a single kilometer of paved or unpaved road connects this city to the rest of Peru or to any other city on Earth. This is the largest city in the world that cannot be reached by road. The only way in or out is by river, a journey that takes several days by boat from the nearest road-connected town, or by air. The airport handles commercial flights, but everything that the city consumes, every car, every appliance, every piece of construction material, every liter of fuel, arrives by barge up the Amazon River system. The city boomed during the rubber era of the late 1800s. Fortunes were made extracting latex from the surrounding jungle. Rubber barons built European-style mansions and imported tiles from Portugal and marble from Italy, all shipped thousands of kilometers upriver. When synthetic rubber destroyed the market in the early 1900s, the wealth vanished, but the people stayed. According to Peru's National Institute of Statistics, the Loreto region, of which this city is the capital, has some of the lowest development indicators in the country, despite sitting on top of one of the most resource-rich ecosystems on Earth. Healthcare access is limited, supply chains are fragile. When river levels drop during dry season, barges cannot pass, and shortages follow. The surrounding jungle is not passive. The Amazon basin around the city contains some of the highest biodiversity on the planet, which also means some of the most dangerous wildlife. Jaguars, anacondas, poison dart frogs, bullet ants whose sting has been compared to being shot, and mosquitoes carrying malaria and dengue are part of daily reality. The river itself contains piranhas, electric eels, and kangaroo, a parasitic fish that locals fear more than any predator. 500,000 people live in a city that the modern world cannot reach by land. They are surrounded by jungle that would reclaim the streets within years if maintenance stopped. Every piece of infrastructure exists because someone put it on a boat and sent it upriver. And yet the city functions. It has traffic jams. It has nightlife. It has food delivery. An entire modern city, operating in defiance of geography, connected to civilization by water and air alone. Number 7. Mawsynram, Meghalaya, India. In the far northeast of India, in the state of Meghalaya, which translates from Sanskrit as the abode of clouds, there is a village that holds the record for the wettest inhabited place on Earth. Average annual rainfall exceeds 11,700 millimeters. That is roughly 38 feet of rain per year. For comparison, London receives about 600 millimeters annually. This village receives nearly 20 times that amount. The rain does not fall evenly across the year. During monsoon season, from June through September, rainfall can exceed 2,300 millimeters, over 75 feet in a single month. There are days when the rain is so heavy and so constant that visibility drops to a few meters and conversation becomes impossible without shouting. According to data from the India Meteorological Department, the extreme rainfall is caused by the unique geography of the region. Warm, moist air currents from the Bay of Bengal are funneled northward and forced upward by the Khasi Hills, a sudden wall of elevation that wrings every drop of moisture from the air. The village sits at the exact point where this compression is most intense. The consequences of this much water are everywhere. Erosion is constant. Roads wash away. Metal rusts within months. Electrical systems short-circuit. Crops that cannot tolerate waterlogged soil are impossible to grow. The humidity is so persistent that mold grows on surfaces overnight. Drying clothes is a daily battle that residents often lose. But the most extraordinary adaptation to the rain is not modern. It is ancient. The Khasi people who live in this region have spent generations training the roots of living rubber fig trees to grow across rivers and ravines, forming bridges made entirely of living wood. These root bridges take 15 to 20 years to become functional. Some are over 180 years old. They grow stronger with age and with rain, the opposite of every man-made structure around them, which the water systematically destroys. According to research published in 2022 by structural engineers from the Technical University of Munich, these living root bridges demonstrate load-bearing capacities comparable to modern engineered footbridges, while requiring zero maintenance and actually strengthening over time as the root systems expand. In a place where the rain destroys everything humans build, the Khasi people solved the problem by growing their infrastructure instead. They did not fight the water, they made the water work for them. 38 feet of rain per year, and the bridges get stronger while the roads dissolve. Number 6. Arica y Parinacota region, Chile. On the northern coast of Chile, pressed between the Pacific Ocean and the western edge of the Atacama Desert, there is a city of nearly 250,000 people that holds one of the driest records on Earth. In some years, the rainfall in this city is measured not in millimeters but in absolute zero. No rain falls at all, not a single drop. The Atacama Desert, which begins at the city's eastern edge, is the driest non-polar desert on the planet. There are areas within the Atacama where no rainfall has ever been recorded in human history. Soil samples taken by NASA researchers testing equipment for Mars missions found that portions of the Atacama are more sterile than the surface of Mars. According to climate data compiled by the Chilean Meteorological Service, the city received an average of 0.5 millimeters, roughly 0.02 of an inch, of rainfall per year over a 50-year measurement period. Between 1903 and 1918, not a single drop of measurable rain fell in the city. 15 consecutive years of absolute drought. The city survives on water piped from rivers fed by Andean snowmelt, a supply that depends entirely on precipitation falling hundreds of kilometers away and thousands of meters higher. If the Andes stop receiving snow, the city has no backup water source. Climate studies published by the University of Chile have documented a steady decline in Andean snowpack over the past 3 decades, raising serious concerns about long-term water security for the entire region. Despite the dryness, the city sits on the coast, which means fog. A thick marine layer called the Camanchaca rolls in from the Pacific regularly, creating a surreal landscape where the air is damp and the ground is bone dry. Researchers have installed fog catchers, large mesh nets that capture moisture from the Camanchaca and channel it into collection tanks. A single large fog catcher can produce up to 15 liters, roughly 4 gallons, of water per day. 250,000 people in a city where the sky refuses to release water. Their survival depends on snow falling on mountains they cannot see and fog drifting in from an ocean they cannot drink. Every glass of water in this city has traveled further to reach them than most people travel in a week. And yet the city has existed for over 500 years, since before the Spanish arrived, because the Chinchorro people settled here 7,000 years ago, making it one of the oldest continuously inhabited places in the Americas. 7,000 years in a place where rain is a rumor. Before we reveal the top 5, look at the subscribe button. If it is not read yet, fix that now. And drop a comment telling us which place has shocked you the most so far. We read every single one. Number 5. Kalachi, Akmola region, Kazakhstan. In the grasslands of central Kazakhstan, roughly 320 kilometers, 200 miles, south of the capital Astana, there is a small village of roughly 600 people where something happens that no one can fully explain. Residents fall asleep without warning. Not drowsiness, not fatigue. They collapse mid-conversation, mid-walk, mid-meal, and do not wake up for days, sometimes longer. The first cases were reported in 2013. A woman was walking through the village and suddenly lost consciousness. She woke up 2 days later in a hospital bed with no memory of what had happened. Within weeks, more cases appeared. Men fell asleep at work. Children fell asleep at school. In some instances, entire families were found unconscious in their homes at the same time. By 2015, over 150 residents had been affected, many of them multiple times. Some experienced hallucinations before losing consciousness. Others reported memory loss, confusion, and extreme dizziness. Children were particularly affected. Medical teams from Kazakhstan and Russia examined patients and found no common pathogen, no toxin in the blood, and no neurological damage that could explain the episodes. According to a 2015 investigation led by Kazakhstan's National Nuclear Center, the leading hypothesis eventually pointed to elevated concentrations of carbon monoxide and hydrocarbons in the air, potentially leaking from a nearby abandoned Soviet-era uranium mine. The mine had been closed since the 1990s, but the underground tunnels and shafts were never properly sealed. The theory was that fluctuations in atmospheric pressure caused pockets of gas to rise from the old mine workings and drift into the village. But the explanation remains contested. Some scientists argued that the gas concentrations measured were too low to cause the reported symptoms. Others pointed out that episodes occurred in patterns that did not consistently correlate with atmospheric pressure changes. A 2016 follow-up study found that some affected residents showed symptoms consistent with carbon monoxide poisoning, while others did not. The Kazakh government offered relocation to residents. Some accepted, others refused. As of the most recent reports, a small population remains in the village, and sporadic episodes have continued, though less frequently than during the peak years. A village where people fall asleep and no one can say with certainty why. The most studied hypothesis blames invisible gas from a mine that a collapsed superpower abandoned and never cleaned up. The gas may or may not be the cause. The mine may or may not be leaking. And several hundred people continue to live in a place where consciousness itself is not guaranteed. Number 4. Ile Amsterdam, French Southern and Antarctic lands. In the southern Indian Ocean, roughly 3,200 kilometers, nearly 2,000 miles, from the nearest populated landmass, there is a volcanic island roughly 55 square kilometers, 21 square miles in size. The nearest continent is Africa, over 4,300 kilometers, 2,700 miles, to the northwest. Australia is over 3,500 kilometers to the east. Roughly 25 to 30 people live here at any given time. They are scientists and support staff stationed at the Martin de Viviers research base, operated by the French Southern and Antarctic Lands Administration. They are rotated every 6 to 12 months. Supply ships visit roughly 4 times per year. There is no airport, no harbor capable of handling large vessels. Supplies are transferred by smaller boats through open ocean swells that regularly exceed 3 meters, 10 feet. The island is the remnant of a shield volcano that last erupted roughly 200,000 years ago. The terrain is rugged, covered in windswept grassland and stunted vegetation. Wind speeds regularly exceed 100 kilometers per hour, 62 miles per hour. The island sits in the roaring 40s, one of the windiest latitudes on Earth, where westerly gales are a near-permanent feature of the climate. According to data from Meteo France, average wind speeds on the island exceed 30 kilometers per hour, roughly 19 miles per hour year-round, with gusts during storms reaching 150 kilometers per hour, 93 miles per hour. Outdoor work is routinely suspended during high wind events, which occur multiple times per month. Communication with the outside world is limited to satellite links. Medical evacuations require either a ship that takes days to arrive or a military aircraft dispatched from Réunion, over 2,800 kilometers, 1,700 miles away. In a genuine medical emergency, help is not coming quickly. The residents know this before they arrive. It is part of the briefing. The island was home to a small farming community in the 19th century that attempted cattle ranching. The operation was abandoned after a fire, accidentally set to clear land, burned out of control, and destroyed most of the island's native vegetation. The ecological damage took over a century to partially recover. 30 people on a rock in the middle of an ocean so vast that the nearest neighbor is a concept, not a place. 4 supply ships per year, no runway, no evacuation plan that works in less than 3 days. The wind never stops. And every person who goes there does so voluntarily, knowing that for the next 6 to 12 months, the island is all there is. Number 3. Grise Fjord, Nunavut, Canada. On the southern tip of Ellesmere Island, roughly 1,200 kilometers, 750 miles, north of the Arctic Circle, there is a community of roughly 130 people. It is the northernmost inhabited settlement in Canada and one of the northernmost in the world. From late October through mid-February, the sun does not rise, not once. For roughly 4 months, the community exists in continuous darkness. The only light comes from the moon, the stars, and the aurora borealis. Temperatures during the dark months average minus 35 degrees Celsius, minus 31 Fahrenheit, with wind chill regularly pushing the perceived temperature below minus 55, minus 67 Fahrenheit. But the most difficult part of this community's story is not the climate. It is how it got there. In 1953, the Canadian government relocated several Inuit families from their homes in northern Quebec, over 2,000 kilometers, 1,200 miles to the south, to this remote location on Ellesmere Island. The families were told they would find abundant game and good hunting. They were told they could return home if they did not like it. Neither promise was kept. According to testimony documented by the Royal Commission on Aboriginal Peoples in 1994, the relocated families arrived to find a landscape far more barren and hostile than their homeland. The hunting was poor, the darkness was longer, the cold was more extreme, and when families asked to return south, they were refused. The relocations were later acknowledged by historians and government inquiries as part of a broader policy to assert Canadian sovereignty over the high Arctic by placing citizens in remote northern locations. The Canadian government issued a formal apology to the relocated Inuit in 2010, 57 years after the relocations occurred. A compensation package was offered, though many in the community considered it inadequate given the scale of what had been done. Today, the community survives primarily through hunting and fishing. Polar bears, caribou, musk oxen, and Arctic char form the basis of the local diet. Grocery stores exist but are supplied by cargo planes, and the cost of food is among the highest in North America. A single watermelon can cost over $30. A case of bottled water can exceed $70. 130 people living in 4 months of total darkness and temperatures that would be classified as a survival emergency anywhere else, in a place they were sent to without honest consent. They stayed because they had no choice. Then they stayed because they built something. And now, 3 generations later, they stay because this frozen, dark, wind-scoured place on the edge of the world has become home. Not because it was given to them, because they made it one. Number 2. Agbogbloshie, Greater Accra Region, Ghana. On the banks of the Korle Lagoon in Accra, the capital of Ghana, there is a scrapyard that processes roughly 263,000 tons of electronic waste per year. Old computers, televisions, refrigerators, smartphones, and cables from the United States, Europe, and Asia arrive in shipping containers. They are unloaded into an area roughly the size of 11 football fields. Roughly 10,000 people work here. Many of them are children and teenagers. Their job is to extract copper, aluminium, and other valuable metals from discarded electronics. The primary method is burning. Cables are set on fire to melt away the plastic insulation and expose the copper wire inside. Circuit boards are heated over open flames to loosen soldered components. The fires burn continuously, producing dense black smoke that contains lead, mercury, cadmium, dioxins, and furans. compounds classified by the World Health Organization as among the most toxic substances known to science. A 2019 study published in the International Journal of Environmental Research and Public Health found that soil samples from the site contained lead concentrations up to 100 times higher than safe limits established by the United States Environmental Protection Agency. Workers, many of whom have no protective equipment of any kind, showed elevated blood levels of lead, cadmium, and mercury. Among children working at the site, neurological damage consistent with chronic heavy metal exposure was documented. According to reporting by the Basel Action Network and Greenpeace, much of the electronic waste arriving at this site is exported illegally from developed countries in violation of the Basel Convention, an international treaty designed to prevent wealthy nations from dumping hazardous waste in developing countries. The waste is often labeled as second-hand goods for reuse, but a significant percentage arrives non-functional and is destined only for scrap. The workers earn between $2 and $10 per day. They breathe toxic smoke for 8 to 12 hours. Many develop respiratory disease, skin lesions, and chronic headaches within months of starting. Long-term workers report difficulty breathing, persistent coughs, and vision problems. Life expectancy among the scrapyard community has never been formally studied, but healthcare workers at nearby clinics describe seeing conditions associated with decades of toxic exposure in patients who are still in their 20s. The Corley Lagoon adjacent to the site was once a functioning waterway. It is now one of the most polluted bodies of water on Earth, choked with ash, plastic, and heavy metal runoff from the scrapyard. The water is black. Nothing lives in it. 10,000 people, many of them children, burning the discarded technology of wealthy nations for a few dollars a day, breathing smoke that is shortening their lives with every shift. They are not there because they do not understand the danger. They are there because the danger pays more than the alternative. The world's richest countries produce the waste. The world's poorest countries burn it. And the people standing in the smoke are the ones who can least afford to say no. Number 1. Yakutsk, Sakha Republic, Russia. And now, the place where the scale is not a village or a settlement or a scrapyard, but an entire city of over 300,000 people, built on a foundation that is disappearing. In central Siberia, roughly 450 kilometers, 280 miles, south of the Arctic Circle, there is the largest city in the world built entirely on permafrost. The frozen ground beneath the city extends hundreds of meters deep. Every building, every road, every pipe, and every foundation in the city depends on that ground staying frozen, and it is no longer staying frozen. Winter temperatures in this city regularly drop below minus 40 degrees Celsius, minus 40 Fahrenheit. The January average is minus 38.6 Celsius, minus 37.5 Fahrenheit. At these temperatures, boiling water thrown into the air freezes before it hits the ground. Car tires crack from the cold. Metal becomes brittle enough to shatter. Exhaust from vehicles, heating systems, and power plants does not rise. It sinks, creating a permanent fog of ice crystals and pollution that blankets the city for months. According to climate data from the Russian Federal Service for Hydrometeorology, this city experiences one of the widest temperature ranges of any city on Earth. Summer highs can reach plus 38 Celsius, 100 Fahrenheit. Winter lows approach minus 50. The annual range exceeds 85 degrees Celsius, over 150 degrees Fahrenheit. Every building in the city is constructed on stilts driven deep into the permafrost. The stilts keep the heated structures elevated above the ground, preventing the warmth from the buildings from melting the frozen soil beneath them. Pipes for water and heating run above ground, wrapped in insulation, snaking between buildings on elevated supports, because burying them underground would mean burying them in ice that would crack and destroy them within a single season. But the permafrost is changing. According to research published in 2021 by the Melnikov Permafrost Institute, which is headquartered in this city and operates one of the deepest permafrost research tunnels in the world, ground temperatures across the Sakha Republic have risen by 1 to 2.5 degrees Celsius over the past 50 years. The active layer, the top portion of soil that thaws each summer and refreezes each winter, is deepening. In some areas, the active layer has expanded by over 30 centimeters, roughly 1 foot, in 2 decades. The consequences are visible on every street. Buildings that were stable for decades are developing cracks in their foundations as the ground beneath the stilts softens. Roads buckle and warp as the frozen soil shifts unevenly. According to a 2023 report by the Russian Ministry of Natural Resources, up to 40% of buildings in permafrost regions have already experienced structural damage linked to thawing ground. In this city specifically, residents have reported floors tilting, walls cracking, and doors that no longer close properly. The economic implications are staggering. Russia's permafrost zone covers roughly 65% of the country's landmass. According to estimates published by the Russian Academy of Sciences, infrastructure damage from permafrost degradation could cost Russia up to $500 billion by 2050. Pipelines, railways, runways, and entire towns are at risk. And there is another dimension that most people outside Siberia are unaware of. Permafrost is one of the largest carbon sinks on Earth, containing an estimated 1.5 trillion tons of organic carbon, roughly twice the amount currently in the atmosphere. As it thaws, microbial decomposition releases methane and CO2, creating a feedback loop. Warming melts permafrost, which releases greenhouse gases, which causes more warming, which melts more permafrost. Climate scientists at the University of Alaska Fairbanks have described this as a tipping point with no reverse switch. The Melnikov Permafrost Institute operates a research tunnel beneath the city that extends over 100 meters, roughly 330 feet, into the frozen ground. Inside the tunnel, the temperature is a constant -7 degrees Celsius. Ice formations that have been frozen for thousands of years line the walls. Researchers study the layers like geologists study rock strata, reading the climate history of the planet in the ice. But outside the tunnel, that same ice is melting. The institute itself has documented the changes in the ground directly beneath its own building. 300,000 people in a city where the winter air freezes your breath and the summer heat rivals southern Europe. Every building stands on stilts driven into frozen earth that was supposed to stay frozen. The engineers who designed those foundations assumed permanence. The climate did not agree. And now, an entire city, one of the most extreme urban environments ever built, is slowly discovering that the ground it was built on was never as permanent as everyone believed. The buildings are still standing. The people are still there. But every year, the active layer gets a little deeper. Every year, a few more foundations shift. And every year, 300,000 people wake up in a city that is, centimeter by centimeter, losing the ground beneath its feet. 10 places, 6 continents, every possible extreme the planet has to offer. A county locked behind the deepest canyon on Earth. An island battered by hurricanes with the shortest runway in the world. A city of 500,000 with no road to anywhere. A village buried under 38 feet of rain that grows its own bridges. A city where rain is a myth, and survival depends on fog and faraway snow. A village where people fall asleep and no one knows why. An island so remote that help is days away in any direction. A community sent into darkness by its own government. A scrapyard where children burn the world's garbage for $2 a day. And a city of 300,000 built on ice that is melting. None of these places should have permanent residents. The geography says no. The climate says no. The biology says no. And in every single case, humans said yes. Not because they are reckless, not because they are uninformed, but because survival is not about finding the perfect place. It is about making an imperfect place work. Every community on this list has looked at the conditions around them, conditions that would make most of us leave immediately, and decided that the cost of staying is lower than the cost of losing everything they have built. That is what makes these places extraordinary. Not the extremes themselves, but the people who refuse to let the extremes win. Which place shocked you the most? Tell us in the comments. If you made it to the end, you already know this channel is for you. Hit subscribe, turn on notifications. The next video takes you somewhere even more impossible. We will see you there.